Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to the Little Reader's house. I'm the Little Reader, and you're in my house. They also call me Amanda out there on the streets. So if you want to address me by my given name, darling, feel free to do so. I'm holding another rock. Seems this is becoming a tradition of the transmission, a transmission tradition. It is a delight to have you in the house. It always is, to feel your energy, to be with your presence, and to share mine with you. It is, part of what we're transmitting today, which I didn't know. I don't actually come to these things prepared. It's like the opposite of a presentation at work or in school. For these, I just show up and I'm like, yo, what accessories do you think I should wear, Spirit? And then that's about it. So I'm getting a hint though, and the aquamarine is kind of relevant. Sharing and transmitting energy from both people and your environment. Oh, I love it already. So what are we going to say? We're building on our telepathy chat a little bit. And we're going to learn about the invisible dimension that Bob's, I don't know if that's the right turn of phrase, but it emanates, it floats between, for example, you and I, and me and this microphone. It is what fills the space where we think that there's space, when we think that there's space. So Spirit, bring it in. Let's go. Oh, I love you so much, by the way. Just want to make sure you do. So we've been told, I wish this were really a microphone. We've been told that there is no space, and that space is particles and matter. And of course, maybe this air around me right now and the air around you is not dense matter, but it still has molecules, which are comprised of atoms, I think. Never quote me on the science or on the math. These spaces between us in the spiritual realm work in a similar way. It's not that there is placeholder empty space. So if you were to look at a room, for example, the one I'm in, with your spiritual goggles on, with your spiritual eyes on, it would not look like an exact duplicate of the room you see before you with your physical eyes, in that the salt lamp would be solid and maybe it would have some like cool negative ions and whirling things around it. And the computer that's emanating a design right now wouldn't be solid. In other words, it's not like looking at the negative of a picture. When you take a photo, if you have ever manually created a photo using film, there's a negative, and it kind of looks like the inverted version in the inverted colors of what is, it's like the shadow side of the light, of the image that we print and we hang on our walls and we go like, hey, there's a Little Reader. Not so. In the spiritual realm, there is no empty space. This is what Spirit's trying to get through. Thank you. There is no empty space. What there is quality of space occupied. Write that down with your notes, kids. Quality of space occupied. So every single thing in the spiritual dimension, which is you could say the realm of mind, we talked about that being the closest dimension to physical form in our telepathy episode. We can call it the realm of mind, that's absolutely accurate, but there are a few dimensions that share this space. The etheric dimension is another. Spirit's saying the names aren't important right now. What you need to think of or what you are invited to think of. You don't need to do anything. You can turn this off and go drink some hot chocolate right now. You are invited to consider the non-physical dimension that's closest to the physical manifested version. That is what the projection we're experiencing is founded upon. That is how Spirit would like you to think of it for the purpose of this transmission. There is no empty space. There is just quality of space occupied. So, in the spiritual realm, I may have all this empty space around me. Think of a minimalist's house. If you go into a minimalist's bedroom, this is an individual who is not into retaining physical objects that don't have pertinent value to them, essential value. So they may have furniture-free space. They may not even have a bed. There was a time when the little reader went through a minimalist phase. Good time. You walk in and with your physical eyes, you perceive nothing but space. And it's like, whoa, that's maybe refreshing for some. Maybe it's weird for others. You're just like, oh, space. If you walk into it with your physical eyes, whole other story. Starting with a minimalist's room, the energy of the wall cover is emanating into their space. So consider a wall like the wall I have right there. You can see that wall. It's brown. I'm pretty proud of that paint color selection. I like brown. That wall is emanating in the spiritual realm a couple of things. It's emanating the color brown, the frequency of brown, and everything it represents is, here we go with the sound effects, emanating into the room. Additionally, the paint itself and the chemical components of that paint are emanating an energy into the room. In a way, the paint that I selected, I don't want to bash paint, but it's pretty toxic. It's paint. I don't know what's in it, but as an individual who's highly sensitive, it's just something I can sense. And the paint does emit a chaotic frequency of about 4 to 6 inches off the wall. Fortunately, the brown color is also emitting a grounding, stabilizing, root-like, foundational energy. And in a way, it's kind of synchronistic. One stabilizes the other. And when we make intuitive choices about our decor, for instance, that's kind of what you're doing. This is why leading from the heart, when you make choices in your life, we're already skipping ahead. Wait, Spirit, wait. But I will just say it, because to give you an idea of where we're going, why are we talking about a minimalist bedroom? Well, here's why. Because Spirit would like to deliver a masterclass on the importance of making intuitive selections from your heart about how you're communicating to other people and your environment, and how you're allowing other people and your environment to communicate to you. That is the topic of today's transmission. So let's roll. Back to a minimalist bedroom. You walk in, oh, space. You put on your spiritual eyes, oh, not so space. The wall has a vibration, the color of the wall. If there's any painting in the room, it is emanating a vibration, depending on the content of the painting. Now, I don't think that I almost said a millennial. A millennial certainly would. Hi, I'm one. But I don't think a minimalist would have a violent picture on their wall. But what the hell do I know? Maybe they have like a guillotine coming down on Marie Antoinette's head. May she rest in peace. That is going to be emitting an energy into the space. If you looked at that, depending on the intensity and the emotional frequencies and the way the painter painted it, or if it was created by AI, the intention behind it, all of these things make a difference. The paintings on the wall, let's say the size of the painting certainly matters. Let's say it's 3 feet by 3 feet. What is that, 27 inches? Oh, I don't know. Don't do math. But it's a big painting. depending on the size, the intensity of that painting, it has an aura that is emanating into the space. So once again, we walk into the room and we're like, empty, incredible. Put your spiritual goggles on. There's now like 3 to 6 feet, I would say, of aura emanating off that painting. And that's just when you stand in proximity to it physically. That's how much space it takes up in the room spiritually. But when you walk into the room and you set your awareness onto that painting, your awareness being on the painting now projects the painting's energy throughout the entire room. Now the room just became crowded with the energy of Marie Antoinette getting her head guillotined off. I can't even recall if Marie Antoinette lost her head to the guillotine, but for the sake of this explanation, let's go with that. We look around the minimalist room, back to physically. We're like, oh, painting on the wall. Strange, but there's still so much space in here. Incorrect. The minimalist has a plant, and the plant's in the corner of the room, and it is verdant. It's a fiddle leaf fig, and it is reaching the top of that room, and it is emerald green. Every leaf is cleaned. This minimalist has an obsession with dusting and polishing their plants and giving them mist, like so that they've got the right amount of humidity. And that plant is thriving in the corner of that room. That plant is healthy and tall. Now that plant has a 12-foot aura that is taking up space in the room. Woo, doggy. So now you've got Marie Antoinette, let's say 3 to 6 feet occupied, 12 feet occupied by this plant, the walls themselves occupying energy. One more thing, this minimalist believes in beds. So they have one, and the bed happens to have bedding on it. But the bedding has not been washed in 3 months. Whoa. But this person has used the bedding every night of those 3 months. We got to talk to them. Just give them like a loving nudge. What's happened is the bedding, although it only takes up, let's say it's cotton. Cotton has a frequency that's pretty mellow. It's not super in your face, and it's not a vacuum. It doesn't suction energy away. It's like pretty mellow. So it's only a few inches from the cotton sheet emanating from that fabric. The sheets are cotton, but they're laden with the particulates of sweat and skin cells and whatever else is on that thing that's been there for 3 months. And guess what? Sweat, skin cells, and bodily fluids all have, you guessed it, they occupy space in the non-physical realms. They have an aura. So, wham, the bed is now taking up space. And unfortunately, those sheets, which would normally be pretty neutral, again, cotton being a fabric that is innocuous, that means harmless, I think. It's not problematic. Some fabrics, for example, I find polyester or fabrics that have a lot of plastics in them, like nylon, to be disharmonious energetically for me. May not be true for everyone, but for my perception. Cotton, though, normally would be a non-offender. In this minimalist bedroom, it is now an energy occupier, and the space that that bed and that fabric is occupying is, if you could see it in the non-physical realm, it's got an aura that is displeasing. It is an aura that is grimy, dirty, sinking, and every time this individual plops into that bed, they bask in an energy that actually depletes them, maybe even ages them prematurely. There's the effect that the things in your life can do to your physical form and to your spirit, which is currently embedded in your physical form, although some would say your physical form's embedded in your spirit. Either way, they're together. Your environment has a great deal of influence on affecting you, both physically and spiritually. So that's a minimalist's bedroom. Now let's talk about a non-minimalist bedroom. You walk in, whoo, we can see that a lot of space is physically occupied. We're looking with our physical eyes. There may be some laundry cluttered up in the corner. Maybe there's some knickknacks. Maybe there's some art on the walls. Maybe there's some tapestries. I got tapestries over there. I got a canopy over my bed. I got a whole, I'm no minimalist anymore. And every single object is occupying space physically, giving us a physical indication on the most primal level. And I say physical is primal because the third dimension, the physical dimension that we occupy, is very much a survival-based platform right now. That's the game that most of humanity is playing right now, is survival. As we continue to evolve our consciousness and ground more awareness and more awareness and more awareness into our forms, we up the game. This is called jumping dimensions, raising dimensions, and it becomes less of a survival-based platform and more of a bliss-based or a thrival-based program. So when I say on a physical form we're able to perceive these objects right now, we only perceive them at their densest, or one of their densest forms. They're actually more dense realities than even this one, but this is pretty close to the densest. So we look at them and we're like, okay, I can perceive the form. I can perceive qualities about it. Is it soft? Is it hard? Is it textured? Is it not textured? Is it pretty? Is it not pretty? Pleasing to the eye. So we kind of evaluate it through the five senses. You don't need to be extrasensory, psychic, sensitive, or did I miss anything? Clairvoyant, clairsentient, claircognizant. You don't need to have any abilities beyond these primal abilities to use your five senses to make intuitive decisions about your environment and the people you're associating with. So this is lesson number 1, I suppose, if you're taking notes. This is the first thing to note. That primal ability, that the ability to see things in the third dimension is enough. It's sufficient. So there's no need to change anything about you or the way you operate or your abilities. You're equipped completely, even if you have access to one or two of your physical senses. You're either hearing or reading this video. That may not be true. You are sensing this video somehow. However you're doing it, that sense is enough to serve you for what we're talking about today. When you walk into a bedroom like mine, a bedroom that is occupied by a non-minimalist, here are the things to look out for in that type of environment. If you are trying to create spiritual harmony, cleanliness, that's dust, dirt. Are things washed? Are they unwashed? Order, tidiness. So that's, are things organized? Are they cluttered? Are they filled? Is space being haphazardly filled, or is it being filled with some kind of order? Harmony of the type of objects and the purpose of the space. Harmony between the type of object and the purpose of the space. For example, a katana, I believe that's a type of weapon, exudes a certain sort of energy. It is not an energy that would put you to sleep. Well, it might put you into a long, deep sleep for the rest of your life. It might end your life. That's not what I'm talking about. It's not the type of energy that would put you to sleep. Don't put a katana above your bed. Consider the Marie Antoinette guillotining photo that we talked about in the minimalist bedroom. Very entertaining. I wouldn't mind seeing that piece of art, and there is a function for that type of energy. Chaos, destruction, death, powerful vibes. Certain spaces need those vibes. A bedroom is not one of them. That's what I mean when we're looking at synchronicity or harmony between the purpose of the space and the decor in that space. These are things we look for physically. Why do we look for them physically? Because if you could see the effect that they're having on you non-physically, your world would be expanded. There will come a time when you will see it non-physically. You will perceive it non-physically. When that time comes, different for every individual. But you don't need to wait for that to happen, as I said, for you to begin making moves with regard to your environment. Spirit is urging the collective to move towards heart-centered and intuition, so gut-centered choices when it comes to communication between ourselves, our environments, and others. We are communicating with our environment simply by being in it, and it is communicating with us. Believe it or not, the salt lamp behind me is communicating its orange wavelengths to me, and I am communicating my overall aura to it. A great example of this in the physical realm is when you wear crystals. If you've ever worn crystals, they could be brand new, straight out the shop, straight out the mountain, straight out the earth. You're wearing it. You're like, whoa, my first wear. This is incredible. You find yourself that day in an emotional state that is turbulent, frenetic, and distressed. The rocks shatter. This also happens with glass. It happens with actually a couple of different elements. They're very sensitive to human emotional states, but crystals are a great place to start. This is a phenomenon. If you're familiar with crystals, you know it. There are individuals who can look at glass and rocks and just look at them for a period of time and break them just by aiming a quality of awareness at them. That's a physical example of how you're communicating with your environment. The effect that the inanimate and animate objects in your environment have on you is similar, although the salt lamp behind me is not going to break me. It's salt. So it will send out an orange wavelength, which has an effect on my aura, and it will send out salt, which has a spiritual property, into the space. This is why it's important to choose objects intuitively based on how they make you feel, because you can bypass all of these rules of having to investigate and acquire more knowledge before you make decisions. Right now, a huge barrier to entry for the collective is they don't know how to make decisions in their lives because they don't know the thoughts. They don't know the knowledge that they think they need to know to make a well-informed decision. So we go into paralysis. We're like, I cannot make a decision because I don't know the answer. And Spirit's saying, oh, well, you don't need to know. Spirit's singing. Actually, every time I pick up Aquamarine, this is a fact, I start singing. So that's the effect that it has on me. Spirit's saying you don't need to know. You don't need to have the thoughts or the knowledge. You're already plugged into infinite knowing. You actually have access to infinite knowledge, even if your mind hasn't been calibrated, as we discussed in the telepathy episode, enough to consciously hear every single one of those endless thoughts. You can still bypass the mind and get straight to infinite knowledge through the function, good old-fashioned intuition. And Spirit's really emphasizing this today. The more we can get into our heart center, the more we can develop a relationship with our heart by making time to listen to it every day. We spoke about this in our most recent episode about you're no longer in process or progress, you're ready. The more we can self-love and tap into our relationship with our own heart, the easier this process of intuition will become. And it will become thoughtless completely, meaning that you'll simply do an energetic check-in with your heart and you'll know how to read the barometer and be like, this is the perfect item to bring into my space. Because you can feel the effect that that item will have on you. Likewise, you can go into your space, you can go into your home, and you can look around based on that barometer of feeling and say, this object or this mess, this pile of laundry is creating a disharmony that I can feel. I am going to remedy that and eliminate that disharmony. The same goes with the color of your walls, decor, electronics in the room. Oh man, electronics in the room. If you could see the way that electronics look in the non-physical dimension, let's just talk about it. Why don't we? Cell phones, computers, televisions, they have a large aura. So depending on the size of the electronics, it has an aura of at least the same size, I'd say multiplied by 2. So if it's 5-foot television, you've got 5 feet of space occupied in front of it by about 2 to 3 feet sticking out. So a large bubble of energy. And what happens in that aura of the electronics is scattering. These electronic devices that we have in the year 2024 are doing an amazing job of connecting us and producing so much harmony by way of giving us information. The way they do this, though, is to send and receive signals, and those signals require scattering and reordering to be sent and received. I don't know how it works on a scientific level, but I know that as a person who can perceive the energy, if you were to stand yourself in front of a television, especially one that's on, although some smart TVs are in the process of sending and receiving information even when they're off, you will scatter yourself like you're scrambling an egg. Like you can just stand in front of it, chill in front of it, just take in that delicious television aura. And if you start to pay attention and watch your inner world and watch how you feel during that time, there is a sort of scrambling effect that happens to your cells, and I mean, it will take a long time to happen to your physical cells, but it immediately happens to your spiritual body. And depending on how attuned you are to that, you get the jump on how it's going to affect your cells over time. The good news is the physical realm is one of the last places where, well, it is the last place. Let me rephrase. The physical realm is the last place. It's the finish line for things to manifest. So as you develop your ability to listen to your heart and listen to your intuition, you will get the advantage, the jump on hearing or feeling how things are going to affect you long before they get into the realm of the physical. Anything else you want to say about this, Spirit, about everything occupying space and the quality of the space? Air. Okay, so what about blank air? What about just this? See how I'm just waving my hands? If you can't see, I'll describe to you. I'm waving my hands around in the air and they're not hitting anything, no obstructions. Quality of air goes without saying. That is the physical basis for air. We can't see it with our eyes, but we can look at the quality measurements on our smartphones. We can know if it's got mold in it, if it's got a bad smell to it, if there's smoke or pollutants in it, if we've lit a candle or burned some incense. We can know the quality of air based off of the smell of it and based off of the activities occurring in that space and based off of the overall space in where it is. That's the physical side. But what about the non-physical? What is going on when I whiz my hand around this? All of the air in your general vicinity that you can reach with your limbs extended in the non-physical realm, that's all your aura. That's all your air. And that air that's around you is containing the wisdom of your spirit. Spirit shows it like your body has your awareness within it, your soul having an experience within it. But there is an animating protective force outside of that that is linked to your soul. And that is the quality of life force, spirit force. So when you are walking around, you're bringing this with you everywhere you go. And when you're moving your arms and inhaling, you are connecting to life force energy that is already around you. In a sense, it's even within you. And this is new information to me, so I've got questions. But in a sense, that energy is, you are like, I know people often compare this concept to the little dolls that are inside one another. Like there's a doll and a doll and a doll and a doll, if you've ever seen that before. But there's a very specific painting I'm thinking of. It's actually a religious painting of the Mother of God, who has this energy around her, this white, it's almost like a cloak, but it's her own aura around her. And that spirit is divine life force energy. And it is greater. It doesn't end at the boundary of your flesh, is what I'm trying to say. It is an aura that is outside of that, greater than that. So in the non-physical, what's taking up the most space wherever you go is you. You walk into that minimalist's room that we spoke about earlier, and immediately your energy dictates, in the average size bedroom, the overall energy of that space. You bring with you this light, this life, and that light and that life, the way it's being shown to me, is pure and untaintable. It is the purest form of life. It's the most foundational form of life. It's how a doctor or a nurse intuitively knows whether a patient is still among the land of the living or whether they've deceased. That light is the light of life, and that goes with you wherever you go. And it's big. It's big. Your health and your vitality make it even bigger. The more often you breathe mindfully, the more often you exercise, the more often you consume foods that have a lot of life force and electrical living current inside of them, the greater and greater and greater that light grows, giving off even a bigger life force when you walk into any room. Within that is your aura, and your aura will change depending on your mood, depending on your countenance, depending on the thoughts that you're plugged into. Your aura can be influenced by your environment. Ooh, my nostril is itching right in the middle. For those who do energetic nostril readings, I know the right means something, the left means something. It's a little middle to the right, but very exciting times. Your aura will change depending on your environment's influence on you, and your environment, and you also influence the environment. It's bidirectional. But that bubble of white light around you, that is with you always. Now, when I'm looking at someone's white light or their aura or their life force energy, that isn't always visible. In my experience, there is a quality of mindfulness within that individual and alignment that makes it much more obvious. There's also a level of integrity and purity. And when I say purity, I don't mean sexual purity. I mean purity that results from being honest, transparent, and values aligned. It's very similar to integrity, but it also comes with a wholeness and a vulnerability. Those qualities reveal this white light the most. And I think the Madonna, the mother of Jesus, Mother Mary, is emblematic of that. So that's what's going on in your immediate space. What about the air that is outside of your bubble? That air, the air that is not being affected by the decor in the room, the objects, whether you're outdoors or indoors. If you go outdoors to a park, for example, you may encounter a statue. A place that I love to go is a cemetery. And in a cemetery, you encounter massive amounts of different energies from different headstones, from different engravings, different epitaphs. Some cemeteries here in the Los Angeles area, we have all the forest lawn cemeteries. So those are known for art and statues, mosaics, and immaculate landscapes, plants and gardens and water features. So depending on what's in the space, each of those objects has an aura that floods out by multiple feet, depending on, again, the quality, the size, the purity, all the factors. But when there's space that's not affected by that space, it's moving, it's potential, it's a little bit of infinity. So if you were to go to the desert, for instance, one of the most tantalizing locations for communing with all sorts of intelligences, if you're just running in flat desert lands where there's minimal landscape, it's nothing but the dirt and the stars. That space, devoid of plants visible, devoid of decor, devoid of people living on it. There's something very addictive about that quality of space because it is so full of infinite possibility. It is any space that's does not have a stimulus introduced to it is what I would call zero space. Like Spirit is showing the number 0 or the infinity symbol because it's like a blank canvas. And in that blank canvas, in the spiritual sense, there's a density there. There's nothing missing. That space is still occupied, but it's occupied by possibilities. And that sort of space, and you get that out in nature, you don't just have to be in the desert. I say the desert because there's not a lot of foliage or plant life to look at in the areas I'm thinking of. But this applies to all of nature. Like forests, trees do have an aura, but it's a very neutral aura. When you run through areas of nature that haven't had objects introduced into those spaces, you're running with infinite possibilities. You're walking through non-physical space that is increasing your life force. It is mirroring you. It is healing you. It is expanding you. Whereas if you walk into a house like the one I'm sitting in, as beautifully, and again, that's a matter of taste, curated as it is, it's still curated by a mind. And that is why Spirit wants us to get into heart-led selections. So we now know what to look for when you enter a physical space. We now know on the physical premise of cleanliness, order, and harmony with the purpose of the environment, what to look for physically. You could think of your work cubicle, your home, your neighborhood, anything. And you can apply these principles. Is it clean? Is it orderly? Is it in harmony with the purpose of this space? What is the purpose of this space? That's another thing. In a house, it's pretty well indicated. Okay, living room, we've got a TV, bedroom, we've got a bed. But when you just go out into your city and your town, you can get an idea of how much love is being invested into that city and town based on how well understood the spaces that you're visiting have been curated to support the purpose of that space. Is a park lush with plants and water features, or is it like very basic bare minimum? Is a playground full of stimulating, colorful toys and objects and maybe even art? Or is it just like super one color on the play set, like one rusty swing hanging from one That's like a haunted playground. I don't know why we went there. But you can just begin to understand, and you can even play with changing the purpose of a space. Going back to a cemetery and the concept of forest lawn, in that space, the creator of the forest lawn cemeteries wanted to make it a healing space, an attractive, welcoming space, a natural space, a space dominated more by nature than by human kind, if that makes sense. So all of those intentions matter. And that's something that you can play with mentally when you're looking at things on the physical dimension. The same can be applied to people, and we're not going to dive into that in depth now. There's absolutely no reason to. Cleanliness, order, and what is the intention that is being put forth by that individual. So you can think of them like a space. What values does that individual hold, and does their physical vessel reflect those values, yay or nay? And someone's physical vessel will tell you about their values. And if you find that that clashes with what they say those values are, that's something to think about. But once again, this is all fodder for the mind. We want to take it home now, Spirit. And as we wrap up, and I move my leg, which has fallen deeply asleep, we will talk about how. In our episode about process and progress and how you're already complete, you're already whole, you're already ready, we discussed an exercise in which you sit down and you put your hands over your heart if you've got them, and you ask your heart, what am I feeling? What am I feeling right now? And you take yourself to a space to do that. You take yourself to a designated location where there's quiet, and you put a timer on for 15, 20, 30 minutes if you can handle it. And you stay with yourself and you ask, what are you feeling right now? What are you feeling right now? The more you practice this process of tapping into what you're feeling right now, the more you will become effortlessly attuned to feeling your environment rather than critically assessing it. We've got the knowledge now, you've got the tools, but Spirit wants to give you those tools to excite the mind, to allow you to feel through this transmission what the tool can do for you. But now it wants to give you an even greater truth. And that truth is the heart and its wisdom supersedes the mind and its chatter. So the mind is a world of half forms, has a lot of entertainment to offer. But the heart is a world of divine love and truth. And it has infinity to offer. Spirit asks that the collective begins to develop radical connection to their heart, radical self-love. When I say radical, I mean prioritizing hearing your feelings and caretaking them above anything else. That's what I mean. It's a great ask. It's radical, for sure. It's what Spirit's asking, because it's necessary to allow you to communicate and to, not mindfully, purposefully, connect with the environments and the people who you are ready to connect with. It's got to come from the mind. It's got to come from the heart. And the mind has got to step aside. We've been so mindful for so many years. It's a buzzword, mindfulness. Be mindful, Be intentional when you're doing something. Make sure in your mind you're clear. We're now moving to heartful. Make sure in your feelings you understand the feeling you're experiencing. Even if you can't label it with the mind, you've built a rapport with that feeling. There's a nonverbal communication that goes on where you feel a feeling, you understand the feeling, and then you know how you want to proceed depending on whether that feeling enlivens you and your spirit and your aura, or depletes you and your spirit and your aura. And you begin to make decisions based on these feelings. Spirit has a network of thousands of people that it would like to connect. It has a network of hundreds of thousands of people that would like to connect. It has a network of hundreds of thousands of soulmates that it is trying to put together. It has a network of hundreds of thousands of twin flames that it's trying to put together. Communication is about to erupt and is erupting. It's already been erupting, and it's erupting even further now as individuals like beautiful you choose to put their heart above their mind. When and only when we do this, allow this, it's not a doing thing. It's simply a recircuiting of the way things are functioning right now. That network that's currently just like, there's a small distance between these thousands of people. As they all come into harmony with their own heart, the distance closes, and suddenly a network that has never existed in this iteration of humanity comes into form. It's interconnected. That's the essential mission that Spirit's telling me is the purpose of this, is so that that network can come into play. When this network comes into play, a lot of systems will change. Think about it. Think of the hundreds of thousands of heart-centered people who have all this love to give, all this life to live. Hey, how'd that get in here? Who have all this to give. They have the knowledge. They also have the internal experience. And they're just waiting for their people who are going to support them in various industries, in various occupations, in various countries to come online so they can begin working with one another to just increase the power of this heart-centered movement. We're not all in connection with one another yet, and spiritual people continue to believe that they're the outliers and the outcasts and the odd person out, or they're just not the mainstream. And Spirit's indicating that there's a lot more of us than we think, and we're all just waiting to find one another. Power structures like the ones that we have in place in our world right now that create the systems that we enjoy or despise are all supported by their network. That's a network of thinkers. Thinkers have driven the world right to where we are right now. Do we like it? Because that's where thinking has gotten us. Spirit's saying, now I want to see how far you can ride this chariot into the land of heart, into the magic of heart. That's where the fifth dimension resides, and many, many more. To get there, it's going to be intuitive choosing. So you understand that everything occupies space in the non-physical. When you begin to follow your heart as the compass based off the feelings you're experiencing about what you choose to put in your environment, what you choose to put inside of your being, who you choose to spend your time with, whether that is at work, with your family, with friends, with strangers, where you go habitually. You may find that some of your habits feel like shit. Some of your habitual haunts are horrible. Maybe you actually hate the coffee shop you always go to, or the church. Or maybe it's time to get closer to your family again, or further. Maybe it's time to reevaluate a relationship. Whatever it is, as you do it, when you follow your heart, it is emitting an electromagnetic frequency into your space. We talked about that. But what we didn't talk about is that it also knows exactly what objects and people to draw into your immediate environment to make your purpose your reality. And no matter what you've been told, it is effortless. When the heart is the captain of the ship, the purpose unfolds without all this cerebral activity, without the visualization and the thinking and the machination and the affirmation. Not that there is anything wrong with any of those things. They just require effort and energy. Spirit's asking you to take all that effort and energy, pour it into your heart. So, I will place down below my favorite self-love resources, as I did in my last video, that have blown my mind and world. I receive absolutely nothing for them. I get no affiliate links, no kickbacks. None of these resources do anything for me, and yet they do everything for me. Because by you choosing to love you radically, as if it's the most important thing on this planet, I get the benefits of living on an earth with a soul who has realized the value and power of themselves and is running to love and to their heart as fast as they can. And that is all the little reader needs. So my request is that you recognize glorious, beautiful you the way I see you, divine in flesh, and you get to following that heart like nothing else matters. And with that, my beautiful friend, I am sending you all the love I've got. You know what to do if you liked the little master class. Like it. Subscribe if you want to come back for more. Comment if you have any insights or just want to say hi. And if you want to go crazy on me, share it with someone who you think would be like, whoa, that's pretty cool information. So, I love you, beautiful soul. Bye for now. And did I say I'm sending you all the love I got? Okay, because that's got to make sure that gets said.